At this time, ladies and gentlemen, we will hear from a young Caribbean voice whose work and advocacy reflect the importance of youth engagement, public participation, and the future of regional integration. Mr. Rahym Augustin-Joseph is a St. Lucian scholar, policy advocate, and public commentator. Rahym excelled at the University of the West Indies, graduating as valedictorian of the 2023 class with first-class honors in political science and law, before earning first-class honors in law. His academic excellence earned him the prestigious Commonwealth Caribbean Rhodes Scholarship. Beyond academia, he has served in several youth leadership roles and represented St. Lucian youth at the global forums such as UNESCO Youth Forum and the UNESCO Youth Forum. It is my pleasure to invite Mr. Rahym Joseph to deliver the feature address.
In this divided world that don't see islands no more, we are not doomed forever to be at somebody's mercy, because these little keys from Nassau to Georgetown have already opened up mighty doors. Deputy to the Governor General, His Excellency Felix Finisterre, outgoing Chairman of the Conference of the Caricom Heads of Government, Dr. the Honorable Terence Drew, Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, incoming Chairman, Prime Minister of St. Lucia, other heads of government, excellencies, friends, all. I have started here not because my now hopeless dream of becoming a West Indies cricketer caused me to fully think that I had to remember the anthem, but because David Rudder was relevant then as he is now. And sometimes I think we forget that these little keys from Nassau to Georgetown have already opened up mighty doors. We have done well, especially considering who brought us here, and they believe that our ambition would be limited to being Euros of wood and drawers of water, where the brothel and the rum shop was the only mode of socialization, and where prisons and not schools were built. But it is this Caricom that has created the Caribbean Court of Justice, both in its original and appellate jurisdiction, ensuring that justice is available to all irrespective of their socioeconomic circumstances, ensuring that justice is blind but not tone deaf to the realities of the people of this region. Our justice is therefore no longer coming, in some instances, from London, but from Port of Spain, Trinidad and Tobago. In fact, it is this CCJ some 13 years ago in Shanique Mairi, which told us that the Caribbean citizens have a right to unencumbered movement without harassment, without impediment, and ensuring a sense of community belonging within this region. But our journey remains incomplete. As the accession to the CCJ and its appellate jurisdiction, prime ministers should be put back on the proverbial table, whether it be in Kingston, whether it be in St. Paul's, whether it be in Kingstown, and across other countries in this region. We should be singing with one accession tune, galvanizing public sentiments across this region in much the same way that we've done in our local elections in the past few months. And we must reconsider our concurrent ambitions of side courts and cash in on the investment in the Caribbean Court of Justice. And I sense that we must reject this false binary that is coming up about the economic fundamentalism must come first before questions of justice. And at a time, heads, when governments across the world are telling their people to look inwards, and Caribbean people are now being classified as others in lands afar off, we should be telling our people to look inward, but for a different reason, to renew the confidence in our institutions and in ourselves. A Lovelace comes to mind, friends, when he says in The Dragon Can Dance that how come everything we do, we appeal to somebody else? for somebody else to tell us if it is that what we do is right or wrong. It's like we have no self. I mean, we have a self, but not a self for us. The CCJ must therefore be the final court of appeal within this Caribbean jurisdiction. And it is because we have not been doomed forever that we've been able to create the University of the West Indies, which for decades have ensured the creation of brilliant Caribbean minds, where every office in this region is filled with these brilliant minds who've studied at the UWI. And we've done well in this changing world to ensure that the world appreciates and makes meaningful progress on reducing greenhouse gas emissions, ensuring the reorganizing of the global financial architecture, reducing blacklisting and other onerous compliance issues. But friends, I agree with the cautionary words by George Lamin when he said that the architecture of our future is not only unfinished, but the scaffolding has barely gone up. And I fear that in this moment, notwithstanding all of our successes, we remain stuck in our crease. We remain trapped by nostalgia of runs scored in the past, when really what we should be doing is dancing down the wicket, finding gaps and scoring runs. And instead, I worry that the politics of integration is not meeting the ambitions and the vibrancy of the young people of this region. Heads, the tragedy is not that the people of this region do not have a regional conscience. The tragedy is that the institutions are moving slower than the conscience of these people. And the question is whether you, the leaders, are going to meet this moment. But you may ask, what is this vibrancy and this ambition that the young people of this region want tapped into? Heads, every day, the young people in this region may be struggling to find employment within their own countries, but unable to tap into a regional market and vacancies, whether it be because they're frustrated by the duplicitous process in the CSME, whether it is that they're hampered by transportation woes, whether it is that they're affected by the high taxes on the airlines, or they're aware for some advantage of just a minute few that their nationality will be weaponized against them to be able to believe that immigration will take away and make jobs obsolete. The truth is, it's much easier to hate someone else from whose dinner table you've not sat at. Or perhaps they're waiting with bated breath for the full freedom of movement that has been promised. And we know it. We know that without movement of people, there is no integration. And that our movement within this region will be relegated to a technocratic plaything, esoteric concepts, without meaningful moments of integration in the lives of ordinary people. And it's commendable that we do have a coalition of the willing, whether it be for Barbados and Belize, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, who at times have modeled after the OECS, but it does not mean that other countries must not join on board to ensure the full freedom of movement within this region. But we are not meeting the vibrancy of the moment to ensure that young people see this Caribbean region beyond a postcard, beyond a cruise ship port, beyond the idea of a TikTok influencer telling them what the beauty of this region looks like, or having the privilege that some of you and I had of attending the UWI Cavell campus, where in that Clico building, there's an inscription by the quintessential Caribbean man, Rex Nettleford, who says that the UWI is the greatest gift that we've given to ourselves, and we should never let it wither away at the vine. But heads, of course, you may be wondering, does he appreciate how difficult it is to govern these little keys? The people of this region are not naive to the international arena. And we know that Caricom is affected by global polycrisis. So whether it is the fleeting and feeble international order, which provided us at times with certainty and predictability, but we proverbially turn the other cheek, as within its design and embedded within its design was always a shifting goalpost by those who invented that same system. Whether it be bananas, whether it be financial services, whether it be citizenship by investment, and the list goes on. But in this changing world, we see a biting bluntness. Whereas superpowers attempt to reassert colonial hierarchies with the lingos of first and only and other terminologies, and where the middle powers at times turn a blind eye and accommodate only in circumstances where their sovereignty are not hampered. And whether it be the anti-immigration policies sending our godfathers and grandparents back to this region, or wars in the East, or climate change where, believe you me, it is the only source where you get more than you put in. But Professor Justin Robinson of the UWI said it better than I ever could. And he said that no one is coming to save us. And it means, therefore, we must believe in our capacity to save ourselves. And regional public servants, I'm not preaching declinism. I'm not preaching despair. In fact, I deeply associate myself with the Gramscian notion of the optimism of the will despite the pessimism of the intellect. And therefore, what it means is that Caricom can no longer have the luxury of time. We do not have the moment. We do not have the privilege to ensure to be cynical. And nor do we have the resources to put our hands up in despair. And therefore, Caricom is no longer optional. It is no longer idealistic. It is therefore existential. And if ever there was a time to integrate, it is now. But the good news, heads, is that if ever there was a place for renewal, it has to be St. Lucia. Not only because the Peters and the Sulphur Springs have given and made people whole again, but because this country is inextricably bounded with the Caribbean Integration Project. And whether it be Arthur Lewis, who is a child of integration, whether it be from labor in the West Indies to his fight for federation, to ensuring that relating regional institutions, or whether it be Sir Derek, who told us all the time that the Caribbean need not be a subject of somebody else's story. And at last, he wrote, islands are not being written about, but they are writing themselves. But he warned us in Star Apple Kingdom of the cutting up of the Caribbean on a fateful Tuesday. And so, Secretary General, Chairman, heads of government, as you deliberate over the next few days, I ask you to give serious consideration to some nagging issues within this region. One, we must overcome the implementation deficit disorder, which has caused a litany of community decisions to never be transformed within our local institutions. The Achilles heel of this integration movement is not a deficit of ideas. There is not a single issue within this region that this integration movement has not pronounced upon. The problem, however, is that the issue affecting this region is that we, one, have not been able to ask the difficult question of why implementation fails. Is it political will? Is it technical capacity? Is it a lack of political stakeholder buy-in? And therefore I ask you to not overly promise the most ambitious plans after the next few days, but focus on a few transformational low-hanging fruits that for decades have hamburged this institution. Secondly, we must realize the full freedom of movement within this region. To do that, we must fix the regional transport system. We must remove the duplicity of the processes and the qualifications in our skills certificates. We must ensure uniformity and harmony. We must bring new qualification schemes in line with our changing education, vocational training. We must look at the Charter of Civil Society properly and assess its justiciability. And we must create a new incentives regime for the returning Caribbean nationals to be able to integrate fully within this region. I suggest to you today to challenge the assumptions of your citizens, quell their legitimate fears, and win against the debate against the mischievous individuals who believe that freedom of movement, even when the evidence does not say so, will cause a floodgate of people, criminality, a watering down of culture, and a door for the faceless undesirables in this region. People move where gaps exist. They contribute to the economy, and believe you me, and you know it, Prime Ministers, in the aging populations within your country, now more than ever, you need the skills of the young people across this region. Thirdly, we must broaden our partnership with Canada and the African continent through the African Union and the 54 African countries. And for generations, you know it, Canada has been a great neighbor to the Caribbean. It has been a partner in development, a destination for our people. But we should move beyond that type of relationship defined by principled development assistance to ensure that it is one built on shared prosperity, and ensuring that in times when the international systems remain fragmented, now is the best time for Caricom to continue to anchor themselves with friends who uphold the international rules-based order. Our circle is not unfinished with, or not finished rather, with the African continent. Not only because our history binds us, not only because our ancestors crossed the Atlantic in chains, but because Africa is home to one of the youngest populations, one of the fastest growing consumer markets, and one of the most ambitious experiments in regional integration for the African continental free trade area. And there are opportunities there that we must exploit. Fourthly, we must treat food security as national security and regional security. The wars that we do not fight continue to determine the prices that people pay at the supermarkets. And it reminds us all the time that when these elephants fight, it is these beautiful grass in the Caribbean that suffer. And whether it be imported inflation, whether it be our dependence, whether it be food insecurity, there must be an urgent push over the next few days to ensure regional security. And lastly, we must not allow artificial intelligence to become another industrial revolution that the Caribbean is a bypasser in. What we must ensure is that we find a way to be able to diagnose the areas for reform within artificial intelligence and ensuring that we contribute actively to that particular ecosystem. Excellencies, friends, this list is not exhaustive by any means. I have not spoken about Haiti. I have not spoken about Venezuela, of which we must continue to pray for during this difficult time. I've not spoken about the financing of Caribbean institutions. I have not spoken about the lack of implementations of the CSME in some respects. I could go on and on and on. But what I will say is that the litany of prescriptions must never be divorced from the principles that must establish this Caribbean integration movement. Our principles must be the seasoning that is embedded in all of our decisions and conversations. And whether it be principles, Prime Minister, as the founder of your country, friends of all and satellites of none, whether it be respect for the rule of law, whether it be non-discrimination of people, whether it is ensuring that the Caribbean remains a zone of peace, all of these principles have to continue to be embedded within the decisions that you make. And let us be honest with ourselves, that we've not always, especially in recent times, observe these principles. We have traded a quiet call to one another for public quarrels. We have traded the revered maturity of regional politics for a mimicry of 280 characters on social media. And what is worse is that the young children and the young people of this region are watching, and they're confused as to whether they're watching Love Island USA or they're watching the regional integration. We must ensure that we only focus and argue about ideas that bring us forward, as opposed to agonizing about every single thing which is wrong with this integration movement. And the truth is, St. Lucia is the place where you can recommit to these principles. Let anything that has happened over the past few months and years be only a genuine lapse in judgment. Or an aberration. And believe you me, I get it. We all live in families. We are all allowed to disagree without being disagreeable. What is not, however, within the spirit of this family is waking up tomorrow morning, cursing your sisters and brother in the far lands with your neighbors and your friends, not dealing with the differences of this movement within house, and attempting to break the toys or our institutions that our godfathers and parents have left for us, as opposed to trying to remodel it in times of malfunction. For what family, friends, in a moment of the slightest disagreement, runs to the courthouse to deny their blood relationship? And I must tell you that the family member that this region wants to remember is not the auntie that comes to the reunion and brings up her family gossip from 20 years ago, but the one who is focused on building the future of that family. And we will quarrel, we will disagree, we may even disappoint each other. But what we cannot deny is our shared history, our shared geography, our shared borders, and truthfully, our shared future. And there will be perceived winners, there will be perceived losers. Everyone will believe that they have the better answer. This is the Caribbean. But what this regional integration project has always done is to reconcile these differences, balance these competing interests, expand the menu for all, and reject this cheap, tiring narrative that the national interest is somehow at odds with the regional imperative, as opposed to working to find the middle common ground. We cannot only love Caricom when we have our way and when we win. I ask you therefore one more time to not leave St. Lucia without recommitting to these principles. Not only because I know Prime Minister would be happy with the increased tax revenue if you spend a few days, so therefore I encourage you to spend, and spend. But because what you will do over the next few days will determine whether this generation remembers Caricom as the institution that met the moment or missed it. It will determine whether the young people of this region will see their future through a Caribbean lens or through national geographical borders. And when all is said and done, when you've worked hard all of this week, you will deserve a party, as Marshall Montano told you. And therefore, there is no better place than the Grizzly Friday night and the wider St. Lucia. And therefore, I ask you, and I would not be doing my duty as a son of the soil if I did not demand of you to not only attend your plenaries and your bilaterals, but to take in the seascape and the landscape of all this country has to offer. Let St. Lucia paradoxically inspire and seduce you. And always remember David Rudder's timely reminder that they're making laws and restrictions to spoil our beauty. But in the end, we will and we must prevail. This thing truly goes beyond the boundary, and it's up to you and me to make sure that they fail. And soon we must take a side or be lost in the rubble in this divided world that don't see islands no more. And Caricom will determine whether it is that we will be doomed forever to be at somebody else's mercy, or whether these little keys from Nassau to Georgetown can continue to open up mighty doors. I wish you a productive conference. Thank you.